Assalamu alaikum, fam. Hope you're doing well. One of the questions was, who hates Muslims more, Republicans or Democrats? So, this is a very good question because, for now, okay, it is Republicans who hate Muslims more. That stems from 9/11 and a lot of corporate media and the military-industrial complex feeding and pushing the war machine propaganda. And it's not necessarily about religion, but about the troops dying and American patriotism and nationalism being manipulated in order to fund the war machine. So, Christians, for now, they don't understand Islam very much. So they hate it because they don't understand it, and they see them as the enemy because of something where the media has taken a certain pain and dug the knife in so deep so that they can keep re-traumatizing people over and over and over with showing the planes crashing and stuff like that to make sure they can keep taking the tax dollars away and bloating that military budget and just ignoring the GDP, right? Just pretty much that. Just big old monster being fed with blood and money and resources. And a lot of Christians, Republican Christians, hating Muslims also comes from the fact that they don't understand how Muslims are more conservative than they are. Christians think they're conservative until they see a Muslim. And a Muslim is in stark contrast to them. If you put a Republican Christian next to a Muslim who sticks to the deen, the Sunnah, and the Quran, and studies hadiths and is on the right path, and isn't on a deviated sect or following bid'ah, they feel like the liberal, right? Because they're like, oh my gosh, this person is no alcohol, no music. I mean, they're able to have multiple wives. They're healthy, they're in shape. They're not afraid, they're not feminine. They will stand up for their rights. Wow, you know? I'm the liberal one here. But when you take a Republican Christian and contrast them to a liberal soy boy, femboy atheist, then they feel like they're the conservative one, right? So, when it comes to hate, if Christians sat down, not listening to David Wood, but if they analyzed, what are my values? How does Islam share these values? They would calm down in their hate, right? And if Republican Christians really cared about modesty like they say they did, and cared about biblical values, they wouldn't be mad at Muslim women for being modest, right? And they wouldn't be afraid of a man having a beard when Jesus had a beard, right? Christians forcing themselves to shave more often is a aesthetic that has nothing to do with religion, really. Further, it stems from the Romans wanting to shave their face to look different than the pagan Gauls, okay? So there's a little bit of Italian, ancient Roman bias coming in there aesthetically. But the Democrats and liberals, they politically like Muslims now because they are against the Republican Christian warmongering, right? Because Muslims are a victim of it, right? But if those wars stopped and Muslims were not having to worry about things falling on their head or being labeled by a Republican Christian, liberals would hate Muslims more. Democrats communists, socialists, progressives, neoliberals, blue dog Democrats, they would hate Muslims more because of the fact that they do not support any of these concepts of legalize all drugs, the hedonistic aspects of the brothel industry, the porn industry, the concert lifestyle. They would become very irritated with the voting bloc of Muslims. Muslims not wanting to glorify abortion, Muslims wanting to systematically do their prayers, to put their money in better ways, the way in which Muslims educate their children versus the way liberals do and progressives. It is not going to work. The cultural values of liberals, Democrats, progressives, and communists do not align at all with what I have studied thus far of any of the pillars of Islam, any of the social values of Islam. So, for now, Republicans hate the Muslims more because of the military aspect, because they love America and they bend the knee to the flag. Wherever the flag flies and says these people must die, they submit to the flag and they say this is what must be done. It's a hoorah, hoorah soldier mindset. So it's about getting the mission done instead of let's look at their values. Whereas with the liberals and them, it's we hate Republicans. Muslims are coming here. They hate Republican Christians. They don't like the war machine because they're the victims of it. Let's side with them. But once those wars settle down, if they ever do, or the cultural war heats up, Muslims will be shocked and horrified with how much ground and how restrictive the liberals will be with them. If, for example, Republican Christians and Muslims who are neutral to the parties teamed up and pushed back against the left with them having drag queen story hour, with them glorifying abortion, and with their very strange ways that they are teaching sex education to younger and younger ages. All the long list of all the things they do could be taken over if all conservatives pushed back against it. Okay? Conservative Muslims, conservative Christians teaming up to push back against the woke, liberal, anything goes, godless, heretical atheists, liberals and progressives and communists, the American landscape would greatly change. But the progressives have realized this, so what have they done now to fight over the Muslims who come into the country and who also live here? Liberals have the soft hand, friendly approach. Oh, you're so peaceful, you're so loving, you're so cute. Be nice and soft, like a little bunny rabbit. Republican Christians are, yes, they are more aggressive, awake, alive, and they can be really in your face, right? And they can have a sharpness to them that can hurt. So for some, they go and pick a party based off of feeling instead of looking at the raw values, right? So the strategical things that some of the liberals do is they talk about wages. Wages. Boom. Well, most people care about wages. So they'll talk about that instead of saying, we want your kid to be trans at 4 years old. So they'll push the social issues back and put the economic ones at the forefront so you can't see what's behind. Whereas the Christians, the Republicans, they focus a lot on, very weakly, on social issues without any real teeth and not explaining their economics and such. So you have soft communism coming in, and Republicans not keeping the entrepreneurial free market enterprise capitalist system in check and allowing it to become a monopoly, and really failing to show people how to beat the market to you in a way that you are free and individualistic in terms of your income, right? Not with your moral code, but with your income, right? The concept of liberties from the federal government oppressing you has become a talking point of extremism for the left. They see that as extreme. They are voting in a monster that can invade your life and can force everything upon you, right? They want the government to grow, whereas the conservatives wanted it to shrink, right? Now, if Muslims decided, I can't have Sharia law here yet, I cannot have a theocracy here yet, do I care more about my social or economic issues? And who's fighting for the social issues? The left in America is pushing hard for their social issues in your face against your will. And the corporations have decided to make money off of them, and now you have corporate backing and social issues coming at you, whereas the Republicans keep bending the knee, becoming weaker and weaker, chewing off their own arm by not uniting with Muslims because they are feeding the war machine. So Republicans, the right wing, has failed to pull back the bloodthirsty war machine and the war profiteering in the military-industrial complex, and refuses to accept that, you know what, maybe the reason why we aren't getting along with Muslims is simply because we are not willing to analyze what our corrupt politicians have done in our name. We care about the troops, and we think that if we care about Muslims and side with Muslims within our own country, we're somehow betraying the troops who died. That is a big problem that a lot of Republicans are having, because they're being told, hate Muslims because we're killing Muslims. You cannot love the enemy. So if the enemy comes within the range, you need to hate them and make them want to leave, right? So the Republican Christians are having an identity crisis. They don't like seeing their daughters twerking and sleeping around, becoming drug addicts, and, really neglecting motherhood, becoming very woke feminists. They don't like it. So they're faced with the reality of, if we teamed up with conservative Muslims against the very uberly free, hedonistic, liberal progressives on social issues, we could combat them, but they can't let go of the rah American energy, because we're taught that at a young age, which is fine. You want your people to love your country, whereas the left wing is teaching their people to hate the country, right? Some of them, the very radical leftists, are teaching them, hey, hate your country. And then the liberals are more like, no, love your country because you can work for Facebook in San Francisco or somewhere, and you can bring your pet to work. But they ignore the poverty around and push it off and push it off. And they don't want to fix the social issues because they like the musicians who promote that lifestyle, the celebrities who promote that lifestyle, and a conservative Muslim who would say music is haram. The liberals who go to concerts and get drunk are not going to like that. Whereas a conservative Christian, they have a weakness of, some of them do go to country music concerts. They go to Taylor Swift concerts. So they say, like, well, Muslims don't like music, so, they're a little bit weird. So maybe we'll agree with the liberals on these, strange concerts where people act all weird, right? So we're having a bit of a moment of splitting in America, and Muslims are going to be caught in between. And I think the revert Muslims are going to have to decide, do they want to stick to the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him? And how do they want to implement that while also realizing that America offers certain advantages of property, gun rights, certain liberties that maybe other countries don't have or really even focus on? They're going to have to say, like, which values do we like most from each party? You're going to have to look at social, economic, and then what the religion says, right? Those main issues are going to be what decides the future for Muslim voters. But for now, Republicans hate Muslims more, right? The MAGA crowd does hate a lot of them because they love the troops. It comes directly from, I can't love the enemy because they are hurting the troops. And the Republicans are refusing to think that the wars are for nothing, because if they feel that the wars are done by corrupt politicians, they feel like they're dishonoring the valor and the memory of the soldiers, right? Democrats, they don't like the war machine because of the victims who are dying in the East, and they hate capitalism and they hate America. They don't necessarily feel as bad for the soldiers, regardless of what they say. They don't really like the troops. You don't see them flying things for the troops. They feel bad for when the troops come home and they don't get health care. And a lot of the conservatives in politics, they care about the troops when they're sent, but when they come home, they're homeless. There's not a lot of programs for them, except for other Republicans who are veterans. But the politicians themselves who didn't see war, who are Republicans, don't care about the troops when they come back. But the liberals, because they're more emotional and they're focusing on mental health care now, because they have that trans movement, they have a lot of more people with disabilities that they try to advocate for, they will then support the veterans when they need mental health in that way. So the wars that America is conducting is what gets in the way of really having Muslims unify more solidly in America. But to answer that even more clearly is that in the future, it'll be the liberals who will, and the leftists who will hate Muslims more, because the leftists are trying to bring in communism, and communism historically doesn't do good against religion, and more atheists are on the left and they mock religion, and the progressives are going to lead us down an ethical realm that is anti-Islamic or causes a lot of devout Muslims to feel very uncomfortable, right? So for now, the left is using them because of the refugees, because of the wars, and because they're a wedge to drive between the Republican Party. But if Republicans woke up and they said, I'm not going to hate conservative Muslims who live in America just because our troops are dying over there, and let's unite with them, because we don't want our daughters to be on OnlyFans, and we don't want our sons to be turned out and turned into these sniveling worm femboy drag queen creatures, and we want them to preserve masculinity with us, and we ourselves want to reform ourselves to be more masculine, it would change. It would change. So for now, Republicans, later it will be, I truly believe that it'll be the leftists. It's only a matter of time, right? And then once more Muslims see how badly the liberals, progressives, and Democrats hate them and have antithetical values that go against them, the Christians and Muslims, I really hope, God willing, will unite, because they both believe in God way more and try to stick to God way more, right? Atheists are not on the Republican side. Atheists traditionally, statistically, are on the left wing. So those fronts are going to come together and we'll see that shift happen. So for now, Republicans hate Muslims more because of the war and the troops. In the future, it'll be the leftists because of the social cultural issues, right? So I hope that answers your question.